Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Inforunners podcast. And today we are going to be imitating the Grinch as his heart grew multiple sizes. We're going to be talking about ships which grew multiple sizes, and this is a chronic thing in Star Citizen. I'm Dazine was here.
And this is Hayes. And yeah, we're basically going to be covering the idea that ships in the past and present have grown in size past their original conceptual design, and looking forward into the future and discussing which ships we think will grow in future.
Yes, and really, before we can talk about what will grow in the future, we're really going to have to start looking at the past. And a couple of the big chronic examples of this really go to your Idris, your Banu Merchantman, your Starfarer, and your Caterpillar. And let's just talk about this Idris here. The original concept started really small at 85, then went to 140, and then, oh, Gamescom, we got 238 meters there.
Yes, this is sort of it started off as a small little ship that could, and then they found, oh, goodness, we can't fit all this ship into one package. We've got to grow this a bit. And then they said, well, we'd really like a frigate. Why don't we just grow this into something entirely different? And, wham, someone who originally got a 155 meter ship or whatever it was it 85 meters, have now got a 238 meter capital. That's quite a bargain when you think about it. So yeah, it's what it is, and its role has completely changed. In fact, it made a gaping hole in the military lineup, which the Polaris then filled as the replacement corvette for what was the Idris.
Yes, and the thing about all of this is, and I really do apologize, guys, with the slideshow, because there's an amazing image of the original size of this ship. As you see this ship going, right, like flying through the rings of Olisar. And you're like, can't do that. But it's roll creep. There's two types of ship increase, and this is the example of the first one. It is roll creep, where a ship increases in size originally to fit a need to be able to fit its minimum design specs, and then grows again to be able to fit a whole new scope than what it originally was. From Corvette to your frigate and more or less your staging area. That is a roll creep.
Well, let's actually go back in history a bit and go back to one of the earliest of ships that grew first. If you look at the Starfarer in the original concept, it was actually not that much longer than a Freelancer, but a lot chubbier. There's some pictures in the original concept comparing it flying next to a hull
57 meters.
57 meters actually for the Starfarer was the original concept. And it grew into a 100-meter giant ship, as opposed to what would have been a nice little sized,
I kind of missed that size, actually.
Yeah, it looked really cute. And, but,
it's functional.
At the same time, people who bought the original Starfarer got a hell of a bargain.
$140 originally.
Yeah, it's like, I think it was like, I forget what they were originally. One of them was 140, but they both went up by more than $100. They almost doubled in price.
And look at the gun scaling. You can actually see it in this image just right here, right now. It's like you have like your right there, your standard size Freelancer-ish, maybe a little bit larger. Then you have these huge guns mounted on top. So it's just kind of funny and awkward.
Yeah. It was cute. And then if you look just after that, the Caterpillar was one of the next largest ships to come along. Its original concept was only 67 meters. It was quite cute and dainty in the original thing. It had all these guns, and it's supposed to be a sort of an aggressor sort of a ship. And then
raid boss, technically.
Yeah, and then they literally doubled it in size again and got rid of most of the guns, but that's another story.
And that's the other one, which is, again, it went from, in this case, like the Idris, one concept, and it's kind of moved to another. It's like raid boss, weapons, maneuverability. You look at some awesome images, and then now it's more of the utilitarian side, modular. And you'll see in here an image where you have people just sitting there, and you're like, maybe you could fit 2 dragonflies in there. it'd be tight, but the new one is like you can easily fit a lot.
Yeah. And one of the most recent ones that grew was the Banu Merchantman. Originally, that concept was only 100 meters. And, you know, I saw a lot of things on Reddit where people were saying, yeah, it could fit everything inside, but they very much did an Idris in that. And that they said, no, we actually don't have a Banu capital ship for militia-based work. Maybe we just steal the Banu Merchantman and, like, yeah, let's make it Polaris-sized. And so here we go with the Banu Merchantman growing another 55%.
And cargo bay, or not cargo bay, but the hangar bay, which they're going to be adding.
Yeah, well, if they fit the Banu Defenders in, that will be something else, won't it? But I mean, if you grow a ship by 55% in length, its null mass, like actually the amount of room inside there is actually tripled. I mean, when you look at like, if you look at a circle and you increase the radius by 50%, you're multiplying that 50% by pi, 3.14. It's like it's exponentially increases the area inside when you increase the length of a ship. So it's not a linear equation. That Banu Merchantman might have been a pretty dainty cargo ship, and now it's going to be something massive. It's going to be very interested to see what that ends up being.
It's going to be great, and admittedly, they did mention it being originally kind of like your militia warship, so even if it did that, it kind of, in this case, this is the second form of growth where it actually grew to actually fit the role that they actually sold it as. Your Clipper ship plus the Banu militia kind of action ship when they go to war. So those are the two types of growth that you see. So when we move on to these other ships, we're looking at two things. What ships need to grow to meet the role that they stated, or what ships are going to grow to meet some of the stuff they're now starting to talk about?
Well, you can sort of classify that as sort of different reasons. Like, the older the ship is, the more likely it has to grow, because they didn't nail down the metrics in the much earlier ships. Things like earlier concepts like the Carrack, just as one instance. The metrics were not down pat at that point in time when they were selling the ship. And so while the ship sort of has the room it needs, it's really being squished in there so much. I mean, look what they did with the Starfarer. It's like they thought they could fit everything in a slightly upsized Freelancer, and boy, were they wrong. So I think, you know, the earlier the ship was concepted, the more likely it will have to grow due to the inaccurate metrics, which they hadn't fully developed yet with regards to how much space you need for an NPC, actually fitting all the components of the ship actually in the ship. So
Cutlass.
And then yeah, Cutlass, another example perhaps. But then there's also the other thing that some of the ships, in order that their roles change. So in other words, like the Idris and like the Banu, they said, no, we want something different, we're just going to grow it. So there's two examples of that. And so now we're going to give you an example of what we think will be the most likely ships to jump up in size.
And first one we want to talk about right here is one of my favorite, which is the Carrack. And this one's a have to grow to meet its role, because not only do you look at the ship and you're like, okay, it looks good, but you're trying to figure out how all the modules are going to fit on there with all the components within the new item system. It's now turning into this kind of giant mess when you start thinking about all these extra components and detail.
And this is also one of the much earlier concepted ships. I mean, the Carrack's been out for many, many years now, so they didn't really know what they were going to do. In order to fit the appropriate, like, crew spaces and all the places where the crew need to interact on top of the components, and perhaps leaving enough space in those modular bays to actually fit like other components and systems. And yeah, I think this is most likely it's going to grow. I don't know how much it's going to grow by. It might be only another 20, 25 meters, but it could be more.
I expect it to grow in width.
Yeah, you know, it has two options. It can grow longer or it can grow fatter. You could have a chubby Carrack. That would be interesting.
We'll see.
The next one is another older concept, is the 890 Jump. Now, it's a big ship, But you got to understand that this is a big ship that's supposed to have a lot of space. Like I'd say in the concepting, they made 60 to 70% of the ship into actual sort of sprawling areas for NPCs to interact, or completely wasted in skylights and big open areas. And they didn't actually leave much space in this ship for components for actual ship systems. Even if they fit, those huge expansive areas in that like 100-meter long ship, once you actually model that in and you put an NPC in there, it looks really small. In order to keep that like vast open areas and all the NPC based stuff there, and not make it look like it's stuffed into a tin can or something, like really crowded, they're going to have to grow the size.
It can't be, not as a luxury model. I mean, you might have been able to get away with it if it's something like just a civilian transport ship, just for, oh, we'll cram him in there like cargo. It's okay, we'll make money.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think this is going to have to grow in order to fit the original vision of the ship. It's just that when they put these ships and when they thought about NPC areas and then components, the 890 Jump is one of those really early concept ships where the metrics were not down. So I could see the 890 Jump growing to 120 meters, or maybe even a Polaris size to 155. I fully think Polaris. And most of that is going to be wasted space with luxury, but they need that extra space with the luxury. Otherwise, it's going to be incredibly compact and cramped ship.
Especially when you count in the shields, the 2 snub fighters in there, then all the item system 2.0 components, which are probably going to be a ton. It's just going to get messy. And now you have the Genesis Starliner. This is one of these amazing vessels out there, but it is going to have to grow, being as, again, you have to interact with the NPCs and everything. And currently, at its size, you're probably going to be tripping over people if it doesn't grow too much, and it's going to feel like coach instead of business class, coach, and a little bit of your first class. You're not going to be able to do that otherwise.
Yeah, the Genesis Starliner suffers from metrics more than any other ship, especially when it comes to NPCs and interactions. If it wants to keep the full amount of passengers to which it has and allow them to get up and out of their seats and do other activities, there's no way this is going to fit in this 80-meter ship. It's going to have to grow to 100 meters plus. It needs to get fatter. It's one of those ships where they thought it was a great idea, but when they come to implement it, this is one of those ships that will have more problems making sure there's enough room for pathways, NPC interactions with seats and other systems. This is just one of those things where they stuffed passengers in like sardines if they were going to do it under the metrics that was initially done. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. This is one of those ships where you thought it was an 80-meter ship, and it actually turns out to be big like a Carrack or an 890 Jump or whatever they end up growing to. Because this is just one of those ships that, more than any of the ones we've done so far, that I think has to grow. And, it'll be really interesting then, because then how many more vehicles can we fit in that lower cargo? How much more cargo can this take after they've redone those metrics?
What about the military module?
Yeah, and the military one. I think this is one of the ships to look out for into the future that will redefine what it is, due to the fact that the metrics will just not match up.
And, of course, you have the Crucible, and this is one, when we were talking about this list, we were going, well, yes, yeah, no, and I was like, well, the big thing here about this ship is, where are you going to put all of the supplies to be able to repair? It's just big enough right now to be able to actually do repairs, but you're not going to have enough to be able to store the materials to actually repair.
And the other thing is that, like, 60% of the ship is, like, or at least half the ship is taken up by the landing bay for taking on like a fighter to repair it. It's like that garage you have in the front takes up so much of its room, and then you've got not that much space, a small ship worth to do this huge repair system, these huge equipments and NPCs areas. I mean, where are they going to put the beds for these guys, the crew stations and the rest? This is one of those ships I think they thought, look, it looks good, but they didn't do any of the measurements to say it still has to be a ship. So I think the Crucible is another one of those ones that you can reliably bet money on to say that this is going to have to increase in size considerably to fit crew, to fit components, to fit. Because if you look at the ship, the cockpit is like a huge proportion of what the ship actually is. What about all the rest of the stuff you have to fit in there? So yeah, this one, it's going to grow.
And in addition to that, it has to be able to repair all these other ships that grew in scale, because Star Citizen, all the ships have grown in scale. Originally, you're looking at some of these ships and like, oh, the Connie is going to be one of your largest ships that you're ever going to be able to fly. And then, well, the Connie is now a mid-sized ship. And then now we got things like a Gamescom, this huge Idris. And we're going, this ship, if it's going to be able to perform its repair job, not only has to have room to fit everything, but has to now be able to accommodate larger ships to be able to repair, because it opens up to be able to repair.
Another ship that may not necessarily grow in size and length, but some of its dimensions may change, is the Endeavor. When you look at the Endeavor hangar, it was made to fit a Cutlass Red. In fact, 2 of them. Now with the Cutlass rework and the ship growing literally in size, I think it could still squeak in there, but I think they will not want it to just squeak in. They'll want some generous clearance so they can, move people around the ship, put supplies on the sides, move out stretchers out to the hospital module. This is going to have to grow a little bit by at least as much as the Cutlass grew in order to now accommodate the new size. And while the ship, the Endeavor, doesn't have to grow in order to accommodate a larger hangar, think about the repercussions for other ships that may now possibly fit inside an Endeavor hangar that did not before.
Really important to think about that, because it opens up so many different angles, and that's one of the things I love about Star Citizen. If you can think about it, you can do it, and it turns this thing into kind of a mini carrier, because if it grows in that proportion, how many Buccaneers do you think you can fit in that?
I wasn't thinking like number of ships. I was thinking like, well, you could probably fit a Vanguard in that now. I mean, it was a bit of a close call before, but if they increase the height and the width of that and the length of that to better accommodate the Cutlass, it may just squeak in there nicely now.
That's actually a good idea.
Those bigger ships
missing it. The Vanguard really is missing a small spot to land, because it's in that horrible limbo where you either have to have a land base or somehow mid-air refuel it. Gives it options. So finally, we have to talk about Frankenstein. Nope, I don't mean Frankenstein. I mean the Redeemer. The Redeemer. That's what it is.
It's the black sheep of all the ships, isn't it? It's sort of like no one knows what this ship will end up becoming or looking like once it's remade. It's a bit of a hodgepodge, unwanted child that CIG has produced out of the ship-based competition. What did they call that again?
The next greatest starship.
Next greatest starship, and it's like, unfortunately, like it doesn't fit within the Aegis base style sheets. The engines are like completely non-existent in the lore and the technology, and it is one of the worst ships for metrics in the game. They have not made a worse ship with regards to will it fit. Like when you look inside, I think there's about centimeters of space between the hull and the rooms. There's no room for any of the components inside of this ship, and the rooms don't have the metrics to fit the people moving around and using those systems.
And it does everything. It has schizophrenia here. And it's trying to do everything. Oh, I'm a gunship. I'm a dropship. I'm a cargo ship. I have beds. It does trying everything.
It's a do everything ship, and that's probably why it sold so well. The problem is, in order to do everything that the original concept actually sold it for, it's going to have to double in like size. So it goes from a 30 to a 60-meter ship, like a Constellation-sized ship, to be honest.
It's what we need. We really need a gunship of that size.
It would be nice, especially something that doesn't have all that forward-fired weaponry. Like all turreted, hell, I'd buy that. I can see the Redeemer end up being that. The other option is they keep it the same size, and then they cut out all those systems. In other words, they say, oh, we take away this and that and make it a bare bones sort of a ship. So like, yeah, this is, I would not put money on the Redeemer growing in size or increasing in price. It's too many variables. We don't know what direction they want to take with this ship, but there's a good chance in order to make it what was originally sold, that it will probably increase in size.
Which would be, again, a good thing because it would fill that extra hole that we have. And
We
that,
had all these 60-meter ships disappear and double in size, and now there's a big hole in the lineup.
yeah, we need a lot more medium-sized ships now, and it would be nice to also, like with the Starfare and some of those things, those holes left from them going up need to be filled. I'd love a small refueling thing that would be good for small jump points or helping out in a small fleet. So that type of stuff may actually come due to the voids left. So not only are we looking at ships growing in size, we are also now possibly looking at new ships coming in to fill the voids.
Hopefully soon. They promised these big medium-sized industrial ships, but for some reason I think they changed their mind. Now we've got all these small little ground vehicles and some sort of game changer, which sounds big, so it's not what was promised, but I hope we get there eventually. Let's hope next year is the year of medium industry ships.
Military may be flashy, but it's like having a beautiful Ferrari, which you take out for when you do combat, but most of the time you're going to be having to pay for that through your mundane means.
So, what do you guys think? Do you think we might have something here with the ships growing in size? Do you agree or disagree with any of those? Make sure to leave your comments down below.
Yes, guys, and we do try to read those comments, and I want to apologize right now. We've been a little bit slow on reading the comments, and we've actually been not as good to our normal schedule. We're going to try our best, but let's just put it this way. We have a lot going on in real life lately. My time is went from boom to like barely existent. So just bear with us.
When you go back to school, it's it's not all roses and the rest. You actually have to do some work. Might be harder than a real job.
It is harder than a real job.
There you go. But we're trying to build a couple episodes in our backlog, so we'll see how we go. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and as always, catch you around.
You're around.